When the first trailer came out for Netflix's The Old Guard back in May, I thought to myself, why not check out the original Greg Rucka comic that it's based on? I like Greg Rucka, the trailer looks cool, and it's only a 5-issue miniseries, an easy, quick read. And I thought it was pretty darn good. It's very much the type of independent comic that comes out these days, which is basically a pitch for a movie or a TV show. Now, it's not as blatant a pitch or as aggressive a pitch as Mark Millar, for instance, does. He crams so much into his pitches that they very much read more like a pitch pamphlet than its own thing. And I would say that the Old Guard comic can exist as its own thing, although it is obvious it's trying to be a movie or a TV show. And it succeeded, because I'm reviewing it as a movie. And that's just the way the comic book industry is right now in terms of these smaller projects. People go and make these independent creator-owned projects with the hope that they do get picked up as a movie or a TV show. And these days, many of them do. And so, as I said, I enjoyed it enough and thought there was enough potential there, which is, I think the movie has a lot of potential too, interestingly enough. But anyway, I picked up the sequel. They've already written a sequel to The Old Guard. It's not done, though. Only the first 4 issues have come out. It's also a 5-issue miniseries. And the final issue comes out July 15th, and I will be reading it. Largely to find out what probably will happen in The Old Guard 2, which I hope they make. But anyway, watching this Netflix adaptation, I was shocked at how faithful it is to the source material. In fact, I would say that it's the most faithful adaptation of source material that I've ever seen. Because when I watched it, I felt like I was seeing the story for a second time, like I'd already experienced it. It was that close to the original. It's amazing. So I have to say, though, I have mixed feelings about telling you to go read the comic book first. Why? Well, on the one hand, you'll know all the twists and turns in the story, and a lot of this is some surprises. It's very reliant on that. Yet the comic is more fleshed out than the movie. So I finally know what it feels like to be a Harry Potter fan, because I'm okay with the adaptation's broad strokes, because I already know all the details from reading the source material. I also have to say that The Old Guard reminded me very much while I was watching it, particularly in the first half, of a comic book version of Extraction, which is funny because Extraction, of course, is made in front of and behind the camera by a lot of people from the MCU. And we all hoped that Charlize Theron would be Captain Marvel, of course. And many times we've been watching this. Every time I see Charlize Theron in an action movie, I'm like, she should have been Captain Marvel. Anyway, both movies feature big Hollywood stars walking around desert settings wearing sunglasses and looking very, very cool. But Extraction is very much on the shoulders of Chris Hemsworth. It's very much a star vehicle. And I would say that The Old Guard, while Charlize Theron is front and center, it's more of an ensemble. She shares the screen quite well with a very strong cast. And in fact, one of the strengths of this movie, in addition to its action, is its acting. And we'll discuss both those things. But first, I do want to point out that it doesn't quite have the scope of a theatrical release. It does, I have to say, feel like a streaming movie. And that's because there are quite a few flashbacks in the original comic to the Old Guard's past throughout history. They're very, very old. And the comic, of course, could show all of them because they just had to be drawn. And of course, a big studio movie would have had the budget to show them to us as well. And we do see a few here, but they're smaller in scope and scale, and in some of them, we just have to hear about rather than see. And that's a little bit of a letdown, especially if you're a history buff like myself. Now, also in the comic, Andy has a number of sex scenes, but those have been taken out of the movie, which I can totally understand, and it does play very much like a choice from Charlize Theron, who produced this movie, and the type of role she wants to play at this point in her career. It's very sexed up in the comic, I think overly so, and I think that was probably to help try and sell it as a property for movies and TV. And I think it's interesting that the movie actually decided to dial that back because it was of who produced it. And that was because it's the actress who would have to do those scenes. But don't worry, Andy has been given something else to worry about and kind of add some dimension to her storyline, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. No spoilers, and it's not in the comic. They do allude to her backstory, though, which is explored in the second miniseries. And maybe they'll show it if this movie gets a sequel, and it very much sets up a sequel at the end with an end credit sequence that I was particularly excited to see because then I've read all the comics and so I knew it was coming. And the end credit scene is so faithful to the comics again. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, you've literally filmed this comic. Also, this is a Greg Rucka comic, and he has always been a very strong ally to the LGBT community. For instance, he created the current version of Batwoman. So just like the comic, and I wasn't sure if the movie would do this. I don't know, this is a benefit of being on Netflix instead of being a big studio picture. Because the Old Guard prominently features a gay couple, Joe and Nicky. And it's not for laughs, they're a very serious, cool couple. And they have a fantastic backstory that I won't spoil here, and we hear about it only. I wish we could have seen it, because it's really, really cool. But it's a huge step forward to see a gay couple who are action heroes smack in the middle of a movie like this. It was very, very well done. Now, while this movie is stripped down significantly to be lean and mean, it has two big things going for it, besides, again, an interesting hook with the story. Again, I can't give it full credit for the story because it doesn't fully explore those flashbacks, but they get the ball rolling. So as I said, the two biggest strengths are the acting and the action. Now, the action sequences are very well choreographed and plentiful. I hate it when I'm promised an action movie and then they only really have something in the third act. There are action sequences throughout. And when you're watching it, it really starts to pick up when you see those. You're like, okay, now we're cooking with the action sequences. That's when it starts to really feel like a movie. And it's a joy to watch these immortal soldiers working together. Think of a team of Wolverines, because they have healing factors. A well-oiled machine that after centuries of fighting side by side, know how to work together. And they use both modern weapons, but also older weapons that they are most comfortable with from, back when they lived. And I love the idea that only soldiers are given this gift or curse, depending how you look at it, and that's discussed in the movie, to join this team. And I wish that maybe that was explored a little bit more. It's not even that explored in the comic. I do think it's very interesting to pluck soldiers from different centuries and put them all together and see how that would work. Also, it's interesting because of the way that the speed of like old film and the way old photographs, technology makes us feel like people at different eras were very different from us. But the reality is that it's exactly the same. People, except for like cavemen and women, it's really just the only thing that changes is technology and style, right? Like fashion and stuff like that. And so it's interesting to have these out-of-time people. You don't quite feel the out-of-timeness as much as I would have liked. But I will also say that as a female viewer in particular, I can't tell you how much I appreciated seeing Theron and KiKi Layne kick butt. I also like seeing Layne's all-female unit briefly in Afghanistan. And it's not woke or anything like that. It's an all-female unit because, of course, of the religion in Afghanistan, and they have to have only women deal with, female locals. It makes sense in the context, but the female team is very cool. It brought a tear to my eye. It was very, very well done. Really cool. Very organic, very real, very natural. Loved it. So let's talk about the cast. Wow, Charlize Theron has become a genuine action star, and it is a joy to see her work, as it always is. She has the build of a model, of course, but has done the work to make herself a convincing fighter, similar to why Gal Gadot is so successful as Wonder Woman. But Theron is more vicious, and with much more experience than Gadot, we'll see how Gadot handles herself in Wonder Woman 1984, but Theron handles the fight choreography like a seasoned pro. Very good. KiKi Layne, what an actress. An amazing actress. You would never guess this is the same woman who co-starred in If Beale Street Could Talk. She totally changes her demeanor and body language, holding her own next to Theron. And she does a really nice job representing the U.S. military. She was fantastic here. Loved her. Really, she's really new. She's really fresh. She's with a lot of other actors here who people are familiar with. And she totally leveled up with them immediately. Really liked her here. Marwan Kenzari is much better than he was in Aladdin, so that's a good sign for if in the Aladdin sequel that Disney is developing, Jafar does indeed return. And Luca Marinelli, who blew everyone away, including myself and FX's Trust. I knew we'd see him again. Well, he's here, and he's just as magnetic as he was in that miniseries. Matthias Schoenaerts and Chiwetel Ejiofor are always good. They're seasoned pros in terms of being dramatic actors, and I think they really deliver as well. Harry Melling is also perfectly cast as a Mark Zuckerberg type figure, and that's all I'll say. Well, Veronica Nago shows up briefly, but makes a very strong impression. I liked her quite a bit. The Old Guard will particularly appeal to comic book fans, as I said, and action fans, and it has a lot of potential to continue as a franchise. But I just hope that going forward, they get a little bit more money so they can really do the flashbacks justice, to make you feel more like you're with a group of immortals and how long they've been alive. I mean, I think it makes sense that they're a little modern. Like there was one thing from the comic they didn't use where, they had a little, now all of them were very good with technology because, it's relatively new to them in the scope of their lifespan. And so the youngest of them was the best with tech. I thought that was an interesting thing, a detail from the comic that they didn't use here. I would have liked to have felt the immortality just a little bit more. So I think they're almost there. This is a very good start. So that's my review of The Old Guard. I definitely think it's worth a watch. I found it very entertaining. It's available on Netflix starting July 10th, which gives you just enough time to read those comic books if you want to. They're available on Comixology, which is where I read them. So share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.